El doctor Thomas Römer es uno de los exégetas más destacados a nivel mundial por su aporte a la investigación histórica del Antiguo Testamento o Biblia hebrea. Él es especialista en filología semítica aplicada y en este momento ocupa la cátedra Entornos Bíblicos en el Collège de France, en París, una universidad en París dedicada al estudio bíblico. Adicionalmente, él es profesor titular de Biblia hebrea en la Facultad de Teología y Ciencias de la Religión de la Universidad de Lausanne, en Suiza. Además, trabaja en las temporadas de excavaciones con el profesor Israel Finkelstein en las excavaciones de Megiddo y Kiryat Yarim. En el año 2015 recibió el grado honorífico de doctor honoris causa, otorgado por la Universidad de Tel Aviv en reconocimiento a su investigación y a su enorme aporte a las ciencias. Él es autor de más de 20 libros de investigación, de los cuales hoy les hablaré brevemente de dos. Este libro, que está en español, muy poca literatura de él se ha traducido aún, se llama Introducción al Antiguo Testamento, de la editorial Desclés de Bruegel. Es un libro de aproximadamente 700 páginas, muy buen contenido y pues altamente recomendable. El siguiente libro del profesor que hoy va a exponer con nosotros es el libro Monoteísmo y Poder, editado y publicado por la Universidad Bíblica Latinoamericana, cuya sede está en el Caribe, y es fundamentalmente una obra en donde se compilan exposiciones y conferencias dadas por él, de muy alta calidad, muy buena redacción y altamente recomendable, este libro de la Universidad Bíblica Latinoamericana. Pues el día de hoy tenemos el placer de presentar a este distinguido invitado y espero que disfruten de la entrevista.
Oh.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Muy bien. Muy buenas noches a todos los participantes, a todas las personas que nos siguen en nuestro canal Limut en vivo. El día de hoy tenemos a un invitado muy importante, sobre todo por la investigación que ha hecho sobre la Biblia hebrea y la historia de Israel preexílico. El invitado que tenemos es el doctor Thomas Römer, uno de los investigadores más destacados del mundo por su aporte a la investigación histórica del Antiguo Testamento o Biblia hebrea. Él es especialista, además, en hebreo, y ocupa la cátedra Entornos Bíblicos en el Collège de France, en París. Es profesor titular de Biblia hebrea en la Facultad de Teología y Ciencias de la Religión de la Universidad de Lausanne, en Suiza. Y actualmente trabaja con el profesor Israel Finkelstein en las excavaciones en Megiddo y Kiryat Yarim, en Israel. El año 2015 recibió el título honorífico de doctor honoris causa por la Universidad de Tel Aviv y es autor de muchos textos que son de importancia gravitante para la investigación bíblica en la actualidad. Professor, thank to accept this interview.
Thank you. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you very much. Estimado profesor, tenemos evidencia acerca del culto realizado, el culto central realizado una figura femenina en el antiguo Israel y Judá. ¿Eso se puede afirmar?
Yes, there is evidence for female deities in ancient Israel. We have several kind of evidences. Even if you look in the Hebrew Bible, in the book of Jeremiah, for instance, people are complaining when they have to go to Egypt after the destruction of Jerusalem. They complain that the authorities have forbidden to worship deity, a female deity called the Queen of Heaven. And then also we have other evidences in the Bible, because in the book of Kings, some kings are criticized because they put an Asherá in the Temple of Jerusalem. That means a statue of a female deity that was apparently kind of a wife of a paradros of the god Yahweh. And this Asherá is also mentioned in inscription that comes from Kuntilet Ashrut, which is located in the Sinai Peninsula, and where in several inscriptions Yahweh is mentioned in the same time as Asherá. And the same inscription also we have in Kirbet El Pom, which is about 30 kilometers from Hebron, where in a tomb again we have Yahweh and his Asherá. So there's quite evidence that in the time of the monarchy, Yahweh had a wife, and this wife was probably called Asherá. Later, in the 5th century in Egypt, we have a temple of Israelite Judean community in which they also worshipped Yahweh, which was called the Yahu, together with the deity called Anat. And Anat is also known from Ugarit as one of the spouses or sisters of the god Baal. So there's a lot of evidence, in fact, yes.
Muchas gracias. La pregunta ahora es, ¿en qué momento y por qué es que la imagen femenina de la divinidad es sacada del culto y se vuelve la religión eminentemente masculina?
Yes, I think first of all, we have to see that there's more and more importance given to a male clergy in ancient Israel. And I think the first step in evacuating the goddess is related to the reform of King Josiah, because in King Josiah's reform, there is first of all the idea that Jerusalem is the only place where Yahweh should be worshipped. And Josiah also wants to accomplish the program of the book of Deuteronomy, according to which Yahweh is one, Echad. It's only one God, and there cannot be any other God next to him. It's not yet monotheism, because in the book of Deuteronomy there's still warning against the Elohim Acherim, which means the other gods that people should not follow. But we learn in the book of Kings in chapter 23 that Josiah was destroying the Asherah in the Temple of Jerusalem. And this can be related to the book of Jeremiah, of which I spoke already, and the people were complaining that the worship of the Queen of Heaven, which was probably a name for Asherah, has been forbidden. And this is probably an allusion to the time of Josiah. So this kind of monolatry that wants to make Yahweh the only God to be worshipped means also that his spouse or wife has to disappear. And we have also a vision in the book of Zechariah, in which he said that there is a woman that is sent away to Babylon. And some people understand this vision as a kind of a symbol of the disappearing of a Mesopotamian goddess who's going back to Mesopotamia. Some people think this is alluded also to the fact that Yahweh is in a way now losing his wife. So I think it starts in the end of the 7th century, and then it becomes more and more important. The whole idea of Yahweh as a male God is, of course, also related to the fact that all the people that write about Yahweh in the books that finally become the Bible, that they are all male, of course, and so they project their own images of masculinity, of strongness, of warrior, of king, of chief, of husband. They all project this to Yahweh. And what we can see later is that there's a kind of replacement of this relation that will take place in the idea, which we find especially in the prophetic books, that the new wife, in a way, in brackets, the new wife of Yahweh is in fact Israel. So the relation between Yahweh and Israel is described as a relation between a man and his wife. And of course, it's always the wife that is not behaving in the good way, that she's running to go to other lovers, that she's that is cheating her husband. So Yahweh is always the good husband who is in a way abandoned by his wife or cheated by his wife.
Excelente. Tenemos en el libro de Mishlei, Proverbios, en el capítulo 8, Shmone, 8, tenemos la narración acerca de la Jochma, o la sabiduría, como pareja de Yahvé en el momento de la creación. Usted en uno de sus libros nos cuenta, con mucha coherencia, con mucha lógica, nos cuenta que este texto, en su núcleo original, en su inicio, posiblemente estaba haciendo referencia a esta pareja divina.
I think this is one of the strategy of substitution. I think you cannot ban totally the feminine out of a religion. You can see it later in the Catholic Church, where the Virgin Mary is playing an important role. She's even called, I don't know what would be the English name, in French or in German, she's called the Mother of God. This is a title that is given to the Virgin Maria in the Christian tradition. So it shows the importance of the feminine aspect, and also even later Judaism, the Shekhinah, the idea of the presence of God, is sometimes also understood as something feminine. So if we go back now to Mishlei, or to the book of Proverbs, it's very interesting, because I think it's exactly that what is happening to Ma'at in Egypt. Ma'at in Egypt is a concept of the order of the world where everything is in place. And in later text, Ma'at becomes a deity which is represented as a young lady, often as guiding the pharaoh, and often also having a feather in her head or on her head, which show that it's very subtle, and it's a very you have to be very careful if you want to do the right way. And in the Bible, I think Chokmah is a little bit the same phenomenon. Chokmah in chapter 8 is presented as being present already when God created the world. So in a way, it's a way to reintroduce female aspect in the relation to Yahweh, and saying that this Chokmah was there already before God even started to create the world. So it's even like helping him by creating the world. So what you can see is that this is one of the texts that tries to reintegrate some female aspects into the discourse about the God of Israel. And there's something else which we may also mention in the book, or in the chapters of the book of Isaiah, chapter 40 to 55, which are often called second Isaiah because they were written much later than the first part. So in some of these texts, Yahweh is also described as a woman. And this is very astonishing, because the book of second Isaiah is probably the most monotheistic book in the whole Hebrew Bible. And it looks like as if the authors of this book were, in a way, they were aware of the fact that if you want to speak about God, you need also to compare this God with female aspects. So in some of the texts, Yahweh is presented as a wife that cares about its newborn child, and this newborn child is Israel, or in another way, is compared to a woman who's just about to give birth, and giving birth to renew his people to a new birth to Israel. So in this text, it's interesting to see that also in most texts Yahweh is always very masculine. If there's some text he is in a way compared to a woman.
Excelente. Profesor, sabemos por la misma Biblia que Yahvé y Asherá tenían una imagen dentro del templo. Lo sabemos por la misma Biblia. Cuando Asherá es expulsada, se queda solo Yahvé. Sin embargo, however, nosotros tenemos en la narrativa bíblica la imagen de un árbol que todavía existe en el templo y que se le llama menorá. Mi pregunta es, desde el punto de vista histórico, no religión, historia, ¿es posible que la menorá sea el vestigio, el resto de esta imagen, debido a que Asherá también era un árbol? Esa sería mi pregunta.
I think this is quite possible that because Asherah apparently was always compared to a sacred tree, and some people think that the statue of Asherah in the first temple was related to a tree. So the menorah, I think, can quite easily be explained as a kind of a substitute for Asherah. Of course, it's seen in Judaism as presenting the, you have it next to you behind, that is presenting the divine presence, but maybe in a more particular way we can see. It's also another way, it's a little bit like chapter 8 in Proverbs, it's another way to represent the goddess by her symbol, which was a tree. In fact, I think this is a very, very good observation, yes.
Y una última pregunta, querido profesor. Y esta me remito a otro de sus libros. Usted, desde el punto de vista de la antropología, nos dice que el monoteísmo absoluto es prácticamente imposible,
Yes.
¿verdad? ¿Podría hablarnos acerca de esto?
Yes, of course. First of all, I think we have to remind ourselves that the concept of monotheism is a very modern concept that came about into the discussion in the 16th or 17th century, what is called often in Europe to be the time of enlightenment. Also, it was not also always so much enlightened if you look to colonialism and other stuff. But anyhow, so the concept of monotheism is not a biblical concept. Of course, there are texts in the Bible that are saying, I am Yahweh and there's no other God beside me, especially in the second Isaiah. But what we call monotheism, it depends a little bit how we understand it, because even in late texts, the question arises, if Yahweh is so transcendent, how can one get into contact with this God? And then you can see also in late texts that they still pick up traditional ways of describing Yahweh. If you go, for instance, to the book of Job in the first chapter, which is probably a late book, but in the first chapters we still have this idea of an assembly of gods in which Yahweh is like acting as a king or the chief of this assembly, but there is what they call the Son of God. And then also in later text, and already in this text in Job 1, there is a figure of Satan, of what later will become the devil. Satan in God is not yet a proper name. It's somebody who is like accusing or checking what's going on in the world, but he in a way is responsible for the sufferings of Job, at least in the story. So this is one of the first questions about monotheism. If there's only one God, who is responsible for all the evil? Is this the same God, or is this somebody else? And there are two trends that will develop. In 2nd Isaiah, it is said in chapter 45, if I'm not mistaken, it is said, I am Yahweh, I'm creating Shalom, and I'm creating Ra'ah, the evil. And in other texts in Job, we have the idea that, for the evil we have the Satan. So sometimes there's a tendency to more dualism, and this is becoming even more stronger in the New Testament, where the devil Satan will play, Diabolos will play a much more important role. And also the question is about all these divine beings that are called later angels, which are also in heaven. So of course they're not really gods, but they're still a little bit like intermediary creatures between the humans and the divinity. So I think a strict monotheism without any mediation is something very, very difficult. So in Christianity, there will be Jesus, there will be the Virgin Mary. In Judaism, there will be a whole reflection also about the Shekhinah. But even if you look in late texts in Qumran, you see that God is not the only person in heaven. There is all kind of intermediary beings, and I think this is part of what I think is a difficulty to have a totally philosophical monotheism. There's just one God, but how you get in contact with this God, and then I think it becomes more complicated. Yeah.
Interesante. Profesor, en el mes de agosto, cuando se abra esta campaña, esta temporada de excavaciones, yo voy a estar con mi esposa allá también en Kiryat Yearim, en el equipo que usted y el profesor Israel Finkelstein dirigen, y quisiera que nos cuente un poco sobre el trabajo que se hace allí para los estudiantes, que son varios miles, en Latinoamérica.
I hope that will be some people from Latin America coming to to the excavation. It's a very international group, and the idea of this excavation is also it's a scholarly excavation. So we would like to work with the students, and that means that in the afternoon there will be some training. Some people like it, others don't like it, about pottery washing, cleaning the pottery we find, and then in the evening there will be some lectures. So I think the idea of the excavation is to bring really together people from all over the world and to check what's going on in this side of Kiryat Yearim, which may be more important for the history of the Bible than the Bible is pretending it is. According to the Bible, it was just a very short time that the ark was put there. Our impression is that it was a much longer time. So, I hope there will be some people also from Latin America to help us and to discuss with us.
Okay, Professor. Thank you very much.
It was my pleasure, and thank you for your initiative, and greetings to all the listeners of your channel. And